Right, I just seen Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3, and oh my fucking god. Oh! Listen, if you're sensitive, if you don't like people criticizing things you like, or you have an echo chamber established, fuck off, go away. But if you're a realist, if you like to talk about things that are objectively flawed, despite you having a subjective affinity towards it, you should stay. Because I have good things and bad things to say about this episode. It both amazed me and it pissed me off. I loved it and I hated it. It subverted my expectations. Yeah, Ryan Johnson would love to fucking see this. I bet he loved this fucking thing. Obviously, spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, fuck off. Why are you watching this video? Otherwise, stick around because I have a lot of things I need to say about this thing. A lot. Now, let's start with the opening sequence with Sam, Tyrion, Lyanna Mormont, Theon, Alice Karstark. It was good. And I've always said this to my mates, Ramin Djawadi is one of my favourite composers ever, and this episode shows his craftsmanship when it comes to composing complex leitmotifs and instrumentation. It's amazing. Second, the visuals. And whoever's the director, I can't remember his name. Miguel Sapochnik. He's amazing. He deserves an Oscar or an Emmy or whatever the fuck you get for being a good director. Give it to him, because he's good. He made the shitty writing of this episode worthwhile, okay? But anyway, Melisandre appearing was a little off. I mean, wasn't Melisandre meant to be coming with reinforcements? Or was she just going back to level up her skills or something? Why the fuck did she fuck off to Essos and not come back with help? What about Kinvara and the other servants of the Lord of Light? But that's not bad in comparison to the rest of it. Ghost as well being in it. I mean, I guess they needed to show Ghost because they couldn't just keep having him off screen. But yeah, have him in here, have him charged with the Dothraki and not return. Speaking of the Dothraki, the thing that made Game of Thrones so beloved was the harsh, realistic consequences of every single situation. Any competent commander would know that you don't send cavalry in as the fucking vanguard. But hey, let's suspend our disbelief for now. Remember once the fire kind of came out of the swords when Melisandre did her magic? Yeah, it felt epic. The Dothraki got all optimistic and they charged ahead, and then they realised, oh boy, big mistake. I don't know the exact number of how many Dothraki were there, but I know that maybe 100,000 came with Daenerys. Probably half of them are dead. So that means what, 50,000 Dothraki were there? All gone. Extinct. I mean, there's probably some Dothraki back in Essos, but the ones that came with Dany, gone. Probably like 10 of them survived and returned to Jorah. Jorah was like, hell no to Tormund. He shook his head. He was like, nah. He got out of there. And that was what gripped everyone. The gritty realism. The Dothraki were I'm pretty sure at least a third of their forces and were gone within what? A minute? Seeing them go out like that was fucking amazing. But why wasn't the Dothraki armed with dragonglass? It's not like they knew Melisandre was going to come. So were they going to go and challenge the others of normal weapons when everyone else was given dragonglass weapons? No. That's unacceptable. It doesn't make sense. That's a plot hole. A blatant plot hole. I can only assume that the original plan was to stay there with the Unsullied, but even then, they still should have been given dragonglass weapons. Yes, it looked epic. Yes, the shot was fucking amazing, but it made no goddamn sense. Now, eventually, the Whites attacked the line. No, the dead's already here. No, bitch, stick to the fucking plan. And you know what? Maybe that's Dany's instinct to go out and help them. But why did Jon go with her? Jon should have stuck to the plan at least. You think, being the competent leader that he is, he would have stayed there, but no, he joins Dany and falls into the Night King's trap when he gets the storm to fuck up the vision for everyone. The storm fucking up the vision, yeah, it makes sense why you wouldn't be able to see it. I know a lot of people complained about the lighting. I mean, I've seen other videos because it obviously in the UK it comes out the next day, so at that point probably every fucking major YouTuber's made a video on Game of Thrones already. So I saw a few. One of them is Red Team Review, and he mentioned how the lighting was terrible and he hates that. Personally, I think the lighting being the way it was necessary simply because it helps us to immerse ourselves in how visually unstable it's going to be for you fighting there. Yes, we should be able to see what happens, but you should also be able to experience it. That's what Game of Thrones is known for, it's realism. However, the realism doesn't really matter because the writers fucked that up as well, didn't they? Eventually, Ed dies saving Sam, which was the first major death I mean, I guess you could count that Dothraki guy, Koro, or whatever the fuck his name is. He dies, but it's off screen. Why not show his death? It makes sense to show his death. Fuck. Did George R. R. Martin's examples not mean anything to them? Why would you have that out of the fucking thing? I don't understand. But fine. Sam survives, Ed dies. Moving on. Sansa eventually goes to join the weak, the young, the elderly in the crypts, and you just see with their scared faces. And I like that scene. It was very brief and it was necessary. And then it goes back to Grey Worm being upset that he has to leave his men to die and put the trench down so they can light it. But guess what? The storm's there because Dany broke the fucking plan. So now they had to get Melisandre out there. And I found that to be very, very good. But the poor Unsullied, they died fast for people who didn't like them because they were foreigners. RIP. So woo, the flames save them temporarily. Now, back in the crypts, the conversation between Tyrion, Varys, Sansa, and Missandei highlight the politics that will eventually come to play in the last 3 episodes, which I'm surprised if anyone wants to watch it after this. I mean, I will, because I love the Thrones universe, but... And you can tell that they're building up a Sansa and Tyrion relationship, where Sansa's slightly manipulating Tyrion, who wants validation, because she's not going to get it from fucking Daenerys now, is she? And Missandei... Those comments rub her the wrong way. You know it's going to haunt them in the future. I liked that. Now, the brief Theon and Bran scene was a meh. It was necessary, but also unnecessary. And then Bran's like, I've got to go now. And then he walks into the crows, which he should have used to fucking attack the Night King or help out. Why wasn't he walking into random animals and getting them to help? Instead of just sitting there like a lemon watching the fight. It would have made more sense for him to be doing shit. Eventually, the Night King gets the rights to fall on the trenches, which was expected. I mean, it was obviously what's going to happen. And I've got to say, the battle on the wall after that is great. It's a great sequence. But, do you know what ruins it? Which ruins the rest of the fucking episode? Plot armor. Plot armor. Plot armor ruins this fucking sequence because, look at it. Either their plot armor saves them or the main characters save them because they've got plot armor of their own to save them. It's very underwhelming. And even Arya being a badass cannot save it. The Hound being scared shitless despite being the second best fighter there. I mean, fair enough. But what I did love was when as soon as he sees Arya in trouble, he's on it. He runs. You know, him and Beric go to save her. The Lyanna Mormont death was both epic, but cringy at the same time because... Well, first of all, she just gets bashed aside by the white giant, and then eventually gets up and just charges after the cunt. Then he just picks her up, looks at her. What? You'd think these mindless zombies would just fucking crush everything they see, but no, this one is semi-intelligent, so he picks up the child and just looks at her. Yes, he crushes her in his hand, but it doesn't make sense that he would do that. And I get it. It was a chance for her to have an epic scene where she stabs it and she's the only one to kill one of the white giants. I get it. The actress deserves it, but the story doesn't. Think about what's important. Yes, I think she should have had an epic death. That was not the way to do it. And then at this point, Arya becomes a Ubisoft stealth game protagonist. Like, it's almost as she becomes Sam Fisher's daughter or fucking Ezio Auditore when she sneaks past us. And you know what? This scene was one of the best in this episode, simply because of the suspense. It was a horror section, and it didn't need any fucking jump scares like it was fucking... what's that Jordan Peele movie that was shitty? I can't remember the name of it, it was that bad. But anyway, that is how you do horror. Any horror filmmakers, take note of this scene because it's fucking amazing. It shows how horror is meant to be done. Suspense. You don't need jump scares. Yes, 1 or 2 are okay, but do them well, and don't do them often. Suspense makes amazing horror films. I mean, look at the Alien films in general. Look at Predator. Suspense. Enough said. The scene in the crypts where everyone's looking up at the door and people are out there shouting and knocking on the door. Open the door, open the door. And they're getting torn apart by the dead. That's another suspense scene done amazingly well. More of that needs to be seen in horror nowadays. But anyway, so Beric Dondarrion saving Arya and the Hound trying to drag her back was brilliant. However, what I would have preferred to be done is Beric should have gone down a bit more easier. Obviously, carry on. Beric throws the sword, saves Arya, And then Barrett throws Arya to the Hound, and the Hound picks her up, and she's like, no, no, like she's in the thing. And then the last thing you see is Barrett just getting stabbed to death by the Whites, and that's it. That's the last you see of him. You don't see him fucking taking 2,000 fucking stabs from them and then eventually making himself room. No, he dies there and then, so he can't be revived. And that's another thing. Once the Hound and Arya and Beric reach the room, Melisandre's there. Wouldn't Mel then revive Beric? Because he's been revived before and she's been shown to have powers. She revived Jon Snow after all. Wouldn't it have been mentally alright for her to at least try to revive him? But no, she just lets him die. The Lord of Light's purpose has been fulfilled. No. What would have been better for them? I'm talking as a writer, and I'm not a professional writer, but I have experience writing shit. Beric should have died there and then. Full stop. It wouldn't have left room for any critique. Now, speaking of Melisandre and Arya, it was poetic, the scene, right? Very poetic. But poetry doesn't really translate well to screen now, does it? Brown eyes, green eyes, blue eyes, oh! Right. Fair enough. Have Arya kill a White Walker. Oh, fuck. You know what? I'll get to that. I'll get to that later. You hold up. I've got shit to say about that, alright? But I'll say this. When Arya ran off, you know what should have happened? Have Melisandre and the Hound go through another door and they go out to help the others in the courtyard, right? Don't just have the Hound staying in there with Melisandre. Now, the Dance of Dragons scene, so Jon on Rhaegal versus the Night King on Viserion fight was good. And I did like the fact that Viserion's face got chopped in half, so just flames were coming out the other half of his face. That was well done. And then Daenerys and Drogon pushing the Night King off to make him fall, and the Night King's just falling majestically. That was well done. And then Dracarys fucking fries the cunt. And he obviously survives. He looks up and he smiles, and you see a hint of emotion. You know? And I think that was necessary. It was really necessary to show some emotion, to not make him just a trope. And they should have developed on the fact that he can react to things and not just stare, that he can smile. Right? And then after this, I was hoping Jon would get the chance to cross a blaze with the Night King. But then he rises the rights before he could get to him, and I'm like, you know what would have made the scene amazing? How I would have fixed this? Yes, let Jon get to the Night King, and let them have a brief duel. Just have him dodge Jon Snow. Then Jon Snow locks swords with him. They look each other in the eye, and then they go to fight again. And the Night King uses his ninja skills almost, and then just bashes Jon Snow across, like 10 feet away from him towards the gate. And then he puts the swords in his back, and then he raises his hand as Jon is getting up and recovering. He raises his hands, and then all the Whites behind him and all around and everywhere, they get up. And then Jon runs into the gate. And you know the bit where the White Walkers regroup with the Night King and back him up? That carries on. But Jon Snow is in front of them running through the gate. That's how it should have been done. Not this cop-out that they had in the show. Obviously, all the Whites have gone in to help to reinforce the White Walkers and the Night King. Have Drogon land and then flame the Whites in front of him. Obviously, then you can have it so that they don't realise that there's some behind them and they jump on, and then the scene carries out as usual. Right? So that all the Whites that were chasing after Jon, they get burnt to smithereens. The White Walkers and the Night King carry on going in. And then, maybe have it so that a White Walker is actually going to kill Dany, and then Jorah comes in and kills him. Bang! That is how you should have done that. After this, Jon then sees his friends are in trouble, and he carries on to go past them because he needs to go and help Bran, and I like that he doesn't do it. However, I would have changed a few things which I'll get to at the end. But I will say this. How is it that the main characters are still alive, but there's like 2 or 3 extras there? I would have had a few more to make it look like a bit more realistic. Because how is it that there's hundreds of these fucking undead creatures coming at the main characters and they're just on the walls fighting them back? If they had others there helping them to battle, it would have made a bit more sense in that situation. But to have only the main characters there, but every fucking extra died, no. Doesn't make sense. And especially Sam. Seeing Sam is probably one of the least competent people on the field. But he's just there screaming, ah! And stabbing the fucking creatures with his dragon glass. I would have had someone protect him, like Gendry or something. Yeah, Gendry would have been a perfect candidate because he only got a couple shots in there next to Tormund. Throw in like 3 or 4 extra soldiers And they're all surrounding him, the 4 soldiers and Tormund. Little adjustments like that. But now we'll go to the main bulk of this entire episode. I'm going to highlight the main changes here, because once the Night King music starts playing, and obviously the dead Starks are in the crypts basically molesting everyone and stabbing them and killing them, it would have been good to see, maybe not Sansa, but at least Tyrion take out a white or 2. Maybe Tyrion could have gone out to save Missandei, but I wouldn't have had Varys survive. I would have had Varys die. That would make it add a bit more to the realism, which I will develop on later. Since Tyrion is probably the best fighter down in the crypts right now, it would have helped to have him maybe fight some of the dead off and then hide with the others, not just have him run off. Because there was that bit before the scene cuts to Jon about to go into the Goswood before he gets ambushed by Viserion, where Tyrion's like, and then it cuts. That felt amazing, but only the next scene, he's just next to Varys and the others. Why? I would have had him go out and kill a white or 2. It would have made it better. It would have made more sense to have him do that. But anyway, speaking of Jon, I would have had him reach the Godswood instead of being cut off, and have him join Theon instead of playing hide and seek with a fucking undead dragon. When Jaime, Brienne and Podrick are at the wall, I would have 6 or 7 other soldiers with them to make it a little bit more realistic, because I doubt 3 people will be able to hold off hundreds all by their fucking selves. The Jorah and Dany scene, I'd keep it the same because Drogon would have burnt the majority of the whites anyway at that point. And on top of this, I like the fact that they made that Dany actually helps Jorah kill some of them. But at the same time, if you're going to have Daenerys kill a couple whites, Sansa do it as well with Tyrion. Now, when the Night King and the Walkers arrive in the Godswoods, Jon and Theon, because Jon would have been there in my version of the story, should be fighting them together. Since Bran was walking, I would have had him in the mind of Ghost. I would have had a Ghost on camera instead of just that one scene at the fucking start. We also should have seen Alice Karstark die. Now, I get it, she had like no lines this season, which I think was a big mistake. But the Karstarks were the second biggest family under the Starks. So it would make sense to see the extinction of another major house in the north, because she just dies off camera and it doesn't make any fucking sense. Now, once the Whites that are attacking Theon and Jon and Bran are dead, maybe have it that Jon's incapacitated or he's injured because he's fighting to save Bran. I mean, I doubt one guy would have been able to hold off all the whites when they come from all fucking directions. If Jon was there too, it would have made more sense. And then Jon obviously gets knocked out. Maybe a group of whites push him towards the tree and he hits his head on the tree and it damages him a little bit. Theon stabs the one that's about to attack Bran. Then he carries on attacking the ones in front of him. And then Bran stops walking into Ghost and then that's when he thinks Theon. Have Theon charge the same way and die the same way to the Night King, and then same thing happens, but with Jon trying to get up and he's struggling to because he's knocked out, he's been attacked, he's been hit, he's got a couple wounds, make it seem a bit more realistic. Have the Night King give another smirk to Jon as he's on the floor. I'd have some of the walkers maybe surround Jon. And then the Night King approaches Bran the same as it happens in the show. And perhaps instead of having them just stare at each other for 5 minutes before he goes to grab his fucking sword, have Bran say something to the Night King. The Night King shouldn't speak, but maybe have him nod or shake his head as a response to Bran's comments. Don't just make him a one-dimensional villain. In fact, how I would have done it is I'd have Bran say, "I know what's happened to you, what the children did." And then the Night King pulls an angry stare and then he goes to joy. Or the Night King has a sad face and then it grows angry. But don't have Arya kill him. Do not have Arya kill him. Have her jump off the roof of the wall that's behind him. Jump over the whites and the land in front of them. Have her do the same thing in the show, but to the White Walker that's about to kill Jon next to the Night King. Perform her knife drop tactic and then go to kill him. And then at this point, then Jon Snow / Aegon Targaryen / Azor Ahai goes, recovers and stabs him in the back and kill this cunt, fulfilling both Arya's prophecy that Melisandre hinted to and the Azor Ahai prophecy. Bang! That is how you end the others, not with just discount the Last Jedi horseshit. Arya doing this Deus Ex Machina shouldn't happen. Arya's prophecy was nice. The blue eyes thing should have applied to the White Walkers, not the Night King. That was for Jon Snow. And you know what? If Arya had to kill the Night King, if it was George R.R. fucking Martin who said it, which I highly doubt, At least make it believable. I mean, think of it this way. The others heard a drop of her blood touch the ground in the interior of the castle. You're telling me they can't hear her fucking jump and run until the point when she's about to assassinate the Night King? You telling me they wouldn't hear her running? And if not, and she jumped, where will she jump from? I don't know if any of them have seen how they portrayed Winterfell, but the Godswood is a far distance from the walls or the castle. There's a big gap in the middle between the Godswood and the walls. There's no way she could have Ezra Auditory'd it towards the Night King. She would have had to run through the Whites and the White Walkers to get to him. How did none of them hear her? Plot hole, plot convenience, done awfully. Full stop. You can't excuse this. You can like Game of Thrones, you can fanboy or fangirl over this, but you can't deny the objective flaws. This objectively ruined this episode and everything they've been building up over the past, how many, 8 fucking seasons? 8 seasons. Oh. Now, the direction and the visuals are amazing, but the story and the writing is heavily flawed in comparison to the older seasons that hold realism and consequences in such a high regard. Fan service is not a bad thing, but when it damages the plot, it fails every time. The plot armor is too much. Beric, Jorah, Ed, Coro, Lyanna, and Theon should not have been the only deaths. Full stop. Mel should have died trying to help someone, or maybe when the Hound goes to rejoin, which is what I would have done. I would have had the Hound join the fight at this point and not hide like a fucking pussy despite building him up to be the second best fighter behind Brienne. Have the Hound help Sam maybe, and then as the doors open, Mel gets attacked, and then that's when she dies or something. Because Sam is a non-fighter. He should not have survived. Mel should have died maybe trying to help someone. Maybe holding the door as the Hound goes to help. Maybe have her go and help Sam in, and then that's when she dies. Seeing as Sam was just on the floor crying while stabbing through the Whites, having Mel die like that would feel a bit more immersive, like in the earlier seasons with some of the other characters. Jaime Lannister too, he should have been knocked out at least. No way he survives with one fucking hand, but 50,000 extras get slaughtered instead. Horse shit. And I love Tormund, but he should have died, saving Gendry, who was the third most competent fighter out of them all. Yes, he's better than Sam, yes, he's better than Melisandre, but he's the only one who hasn't had formal training out of all the others. He should have got into more sticky situations than all of them. Varys should be dead. Podrick should be dead. Grey Worm should be dead. Sir Davos should be dead. Brienne is my second favourite character, but she should have died trying to save Jaime. Plot armor ruined this episode. Bad writing ruined this episode. I've viewed this 3 times, right? The first viewing was an 8 out of 10 for me. The second was a 7.5 and my third was a 6. I cannot suspend my disbelief anymore. Each viewing has made me chip at it and realise that Game of Thrones may be epic. Yeah, sure it is. But after this, it's an objectively mediocre show now. And I don't think it's George R. R. Martin's fault. I doubt it. I think Dan and Dave decided not to listen to George R. R. Martin's advice in that meeting that they had, and they decided to go full Hollywood by subverting expectations, Rian Johnson style. In fact, I bet Rian Johnson fucking loved this. And guess what? Dan and Dave, just like Rian Johnson, are also going to be getting to write their own Star Wars content. Apparently based in the Old Republic era. Oh, God, give me strength. People compared this to The Lord of the Rings, but come on. I think the Lord of the Rings, especially Battle of Helm's Deep, or the one at the end of the 3rd film, miles better than this. And that's upsetting. Despite how amazingly well directed it was, it couldn't save it. And that's a shame. It really is. I feel bad for Miguel Sapochnik, man, because his directing, it couldn't save the writing. The shitty writing from Dan and Dave. And look, these guys, these 2 writers, just because, listen, people held them in a high regard because of how well they wrote the first few seasons. You got to remember, they were following George R. R. Martin's books. It wasn't them who wrote them. They are not good writers. If this is their version of good writing, they're not. They are not, and this is going to ruin them. I'm not done with Game of Thrones yet. I want to see what happens. I've invested so much of my fucking life. I've been watching Game of Thrones since season 3 premiered, and I jumped in on that point, and I binge watched the first 2 seasons, and the traumatic, hardcore realism, Red Wedding. Ned Stark. That was Game of Thrones at its peak. It went downhill after season 5 and looked like it was going to get better. It really looked like it was going to get better, but it just flopped. It really did. And I don't know how it's going to translate into the remaining episodes, but I mean, they use plot armors to keep all these fucking characters alive. I guess they'll be able to figure it out. If they fuck up the remaining 3 episodes, this will be the worst ending to a series, to a film franchise, to whatever ever made. And you know what that will do? It will subvert your expectations. Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! You've just gotta suspend your disbelief. Oh my god, what happened? Oh, what the fuck did they do?